Hello everyone and welcome to a new video. MC-Mura here, and in today's video we're gonna be making a Street Fighter V tier list. This is probably gonna be the final tier list before the big balance patch in March, I believe. Gonna be after Capcom Cup. If that takes place, finger crossed. Obviously I had already made a tier list for Street Fighter V this season, but this was done last April, and this is how it looked like. I had Rashid, Cammy and Zeku as a top 3, and obviously a lot of characters after that, but you have to consider that this was done before a lot of events took place. For example, since this balance patch, Ken got mega buffed, Nash got mega buffed, Dhalsim got changed as well, Dan got his infinite removed, we had Akira and Oro, and then the short hop kind of thing for Oro got removed. We obviously had Luke, and obviously a lot of play times, a lot of tournaments and a lot of events, so things are a lot more clear on how they are right now. I think some of it stood the test of time, some of it not really that much, so let's talk about it. And like I said, here I had Cammy, Rashid and Zeku in the top 3. Cammy got a little bit of nerfs to her V trigger and the EX dive kick, so I don't think she is number 1, but I do think the number 1 character in Street Fighter V for me is Juri. Juri is a very powerful character. Back then I said that the nerfs to Aegis or the V shift is a nerf to Aegis, and I had him in like the S tier, but not the S plus, not top 3. I don't think this stood the test of time. Juri proved himself to be still a very capable and very strong character. A lot of players are using him. You had a player like Tokido, who switched over from Akuma to Juri, which is kind of unfortunate to be honest, but it is what it is. A very powerful character, obviously. His fundamentals are amazing, his neutral is amazing. The changes to the EX tackle, it was like a nerf, but it also ended up buffing him because it made his pressure with Aegis even better. So a lot have changed since then, and I do think he kinda stood still in the very top despite the changes around him. So very powerful character. The second one, and this might surprise some people, and I can't believe how dumb I was when I made that tier list. It's a mistake that I do think I have to fix, and a lot of people might think this is extreme, but this is honestly how I believe. Dhalsim. Previously I put Dhalsim in the A- tier, and now looking back at it and looking back at how ridiculously strong Dhalsim is, I can't see him not being a top 3 or a top 5 character. Dhalsim is a very powerful character, and I do think he probably has the highest number of winning matchups in the game. Like if you take a look at the entire roster here, he probably beats most of them, to be completely honest. He dominates characters. And I mean, some characters can stand up to him, but even then, even against matchups where he's supposed to lose, you still see Dhalsim players bullying through all the time. He obviously is a difficult character to play in a way, but I do think obviously he's ridiculous, and he has some tools that will make you scratch your head, right? Like the drill, right? It's like insane. I can't believe like how powerful his dive kicks is. I've said that his dive kick is the best dive kick in the game, man. It really is. And we have moves like the Yoga Gale or like the damage output with the EX Firebolt. Obviously the combo is a little bit tricky, but still, like, damn dude, he can easily 50% you or with like 3 bars or 2 bars, which is insane. And obviously they buffed his V trigger 1. We expected the nerfs to jab, anti-air and float to be detrimental to him, but V-Shift ended up buffing him more than any character in the game, I believe, so as if Dhalsim needed an escape option. So I do think he's very, very powerful still. And number 3 we got Rashid. And Rashid is a character who I put in the top 3 previously, and I still stand by that. He didn't get changed that much, if anything. V-Shift ended up helping him as well. He was already rich, and now he's even richer. His defense is even more powerful. His neutral was already ridiculous. So Rashid, I don't think there is much to say, honestly. Like, he's been very strong for so many years now. We all know about it. Not much have changed. still a very powerful character. Number 4 is gonna be Cammy. And Cammy is a character who I do think got nerfed a little bit. The changes to the EX and V trigger dive kick, although they are not as brutal as you would expect. So what they changed is that now they have a little bit more recovery, and they also changed EX spiral arrow so that it doesn't, the invincibility, the anti-fireball invincibility doesn't kick in immediately. I do think it kicks in on frame 4 instead of frame 1. So what this means is that it's easier to throw fireballs at Cammy, and obviously if you happen to V-shift her dive kicks, she does get punished, right? Even the V-trigger and the EX dive kicks. So it's still difficult to do that because she can kinda manipulate the timing and spacing obviously, but there is a counterplay option now. Previously there was none, now there is a counterplay option that can be very damaging if you happen to do it, and obviously the changes made it so that she does have a couple of matchups who are a little bit harder now, like for example Guile or characters like Sagat who have really good fireballs. She have a little bit harder time against them, so still a very powerful character, but I do think just that little bit weaker. Previously on my early tier list I had Zeku in the top 5, and I do think this didn't stand the test of time right now. I do think there is another character who I had in mind who I would put in the top 5. I know it's still kind of recent, but Luke I do think is top 5. I do think maybe he would even move upwards if he stands as he is right now, but I do firmly believe this is a top 5 character. Luke to me is a very well-rounded character. Recently there was a video that was made by FGC translated, and I do think there is a little bit of mistranslation on what Daigo was meaning. He was talking about how Luke can open up players, and Daigo said that in a way Luke is like a grappler, and I don't think he meant that Luke like opens you up on defense like a grappler. What he meant is Luke forces you to take risks simply by existing, right? And this is a very powerful trait. When a grappler is near you, what do? You jump, right? Because you have to. And Luke kinda has that effect, right? Because of his fireballs. He doesn't force you to jump in close proximity, but he will force you to take risks to approach him, or you will be forced to play a ground game that he's very good at, right? So simply because his fireball kinda renders the anti-fireball tools kinda useless, to be honest. You can't really sway him on reaction, you can't like armor his stuff on reaction, you can't really do that. And because of this, you will be forced to jump, take risks, or like do a YOLO move, whiff or something. So he has that ability, which is very powerful. And also, ever since Luke got out, he's still developing. You have to consider that Luke is very powerful right now, but he's still developing. Even then, people are saying that Luke might be comparable to Thess in last season. And if you're getting compared to Thess, you know that you're ridiculous, right? And now we have his V skill 2. People are starting to develop stuff with that. V trigger 2 is now, we're seeing like 60% whiff punishes with V trigger 2. So the character, you know, he's getting there. And like I said, if you're being compared to Thess, there is no smoke without fire, right? So top 1, maybe not. Top 5, in my opinion, certainly. And there is one more character who I want to slot in the top 5. There is no place for, there is no 5 in the top 5, but I do think Poison is a character that you can also make a very strong case for. This is one that I also kinda, I think I misjudged in my earlier tier list. I had Poison in the A tier, but looking back at it right now, you know what, she is a lot better than that. Back then, obviously, it was in April, the balance patch was still kind of fresh. I was still having the Season 4 Poison in my mind, but I do think she stood the test of time very well. Poison is still very, very powerful, very dominant, proving to be successful. So I do think she's a character who is still overall very solid. There is one more character that I would like to put in the S tier, who I think is also very powerful, and that's Balrog. Balrog, I believe, is ridiculous. Very powerful. He also, I had him, I believe, in the A tier last patch, or the S tier, and he's still kind of in the same spot, right? Where he's very powerful, very successful character, have a lot of winning matchups, and easily, easily bullies others, right? Like Balrog really is like a big bully. The changes to dash punches in some matchups help him, in some matches they might hurt him. But overall, I do think he's very powerful. I do think also V-Shift is very helpful to him. V-Skill 2 is kind of ridiculous. There was a time where everyone was like running V-Skill 2 and V-Trigger 1. We're starting to seeing some new combination with him. For a while also there was a big focus on tab and how you can use that. People like holding final tab and everything. So obviously like a very powerful. I think there is no way you couldn't put Balrog in the upper echelon of characters. Let's put it that way. And after that, I would like to start to get into the A tier, and I do think a couple of characters in the A tiers are still very powerful. These characters are the ones who, to me, are unquestionably top 10, right? Like I wouldn't dare say that they are not top 10. Everyone after that you can kind of make an argument for. Maybe they are very strong, maybe not, but I do think they are pretty good. Starting first with Thess, and the reason that Thess is here is because of the changes to their V-Trigger 2. V-Trigger 2 Thess, in my opinion, is currently the cheapest V-Trigger in the game. It's almost unavoidable. Like V-Trigger 2 Thess is very difficult to counter. You have to know exactly what setup the opponent is going for. For the most part, most characters can't be reversal without getting punished. He can set it, or they can set it up like mid-screen. They can set it up full screen. They can set it up on knockdowns. They can set it up on block. A lot of sequences. There's so much variance in it, and it's very difficult to escape. So I do think Thess is obviously a very strong contender. And back then I had Thess in the A tier, so didn't change that much, but this was outside of top 10. For me, they are in a top 10 position at the moment. And on a similar note, I do think Guile also kind of fits here. Guile, now that I've been working on a Guile guide, I'm gonna be completely honest. Guile ended up being more difficult to play than I given him credit for. If I'm being completely honest, I playing Guile right now. I've been playing Guile for a couple of weeks. It's kind of an eye-opening experience. I'm learning a lot about him that I didn't really know previously, and how to approach things with him. Less is more is really true with Guile, but obviously a lot of players are having success with him. Higuishi, Daigo. He's a very successful character overall this season. So yeah, obviously a very good contender. And obviously I can't leave Zeku, who I do think is still a very powerful character all around. He have a really good matchup spread. He doesn't really win that much against a lot of characters, but he doesn't lose that much. It's almost never a bad idea to use Zeku, which is stable, right? Like I don't think that's stable. Maybe in some matchups you can go for other characters who can do better, but I do think overall he's a very stable character, which is good, right? I do think for competitive play especially that is good. And obviously we had players like Infectious and Angry Bird doing work with him, so overall I think he is pretty solid. Next up we got a bunch of characters who I do think are like, maybe you can argue they are top 10, they are just outside of top 10, that kind of situation. We got Karin, who I do think you can make an argument for. I do think Karin is a very strong character overall, but the issue with Karin currently is that the very good characters like Poison and Dhalsim, can Karin really be like in the top echelon of characters if Poison and Dhalsim are that relevant? I think that's difficult. That's a difficult question to answer, right? So I think their biggest issues are these two characters being that strong. A lot of players are using Poison, and Dhalsim is very powerful. So I don't know. It's a difficult question to answer for sure. She is a character who kinda have to play their game or try to random them out, which doesn't always work out for Karin in the long run. And I do think on a similar note, Kolin is kinda in the same boat. Although Kolin isn't, she doesn't suffer versus the long-limbed zoning as much as Karin does. Zoners in general being powerful are hard for her, but she is still a really good character. Maybe Kolin, I don't think there's anything like that's wrong with Kolin. She is still a really good wave punish character, she have really good pressure and everything, but it's just a situation of like others being really good at what they do, and maybe kinda sheep. Kolin, I think, is not, like, after the changes to her V-Trigger 2, I think she's very strong, but I do think she isn't sheep enough, if that makes sense. Maybe later, or maybe like, but I don't think there's any room even for like tech to be found. So I don't know. She isn't like there's nothing wrong with her, just that there are others who are better. So that's about it for Kolin. And who else I do think can make it in the spot? Looking at these guys, obviously Bison, still a character who have been very consistent all around. Very good neutral. V-Shift, I do think, hurt him a little bit if you are autopiloting with Bison, or if you are very predictable. But it did help him, I do believe, in some of his matchups. I don't think he have a, the main issue with Bison is that he didn't change that much, and people are just getting better and better at fighting the matchup, which is very difficult. Bison, I feel, is a character who is a lot easier to play on the lower level, but he is really hard on high level. Like, if you're talking about tournament level Bison, there are very few people who can actually play Bison on like top level, which is saying a lot, because the character is like, he is kind of pick up and play, to be honest. But on the highest level, no, Bison, there is difficulties there. That's why you see players like Dogura being kinda inconsistent with him, I wanna say. Problem X having a lot of pocket characters to cover him. So yeah, he's a little bit all over the place, but still, I do think still a really powerful character overall. I would certainly put him in the top 15 spot. And speaking of that, my boy Ken, I do think also is here right now, and I do think Ken is probably the most powerful Shoto in Street Fighter V. Ken got a lot of changes, and all of the changes play to his strengths. The change to his DP, the heavy punch DP, is so significant than I do believe it's a lot more significant than most people realize. A lot of people say that characters like Chun-Li or Armika have like amazing moves for punishing because they got EX legs, they got EX speech. Ken now have a meterless EX legs, right? Because his heavy punch DP goes so far, is so good against fireballs, his V-Trigger 2 is so good, his whiff punishing now is insanely strong. I said previously on the set show that if Ken is being played by an AI, he would be a totally ridiculous character, and I stand by that. The difficulty with Ken is that you will need really good awareness, be really good at whiff punishing and hit confirming. Obviously others like Karin maybe do it a little bit easier than Ken does, at least like the neutral control, but I do think because he have a fireball, he kind of fights some of the other characters really well, and his Anga is a lot scarier than Karin. Ken, I do think, is a lot more powerful defensively. He's a lot scarier defensively than Karin, simply because of the EXDP and how he kind of works overall. So he's certainly a very capable character in my opinion. And after that, we got a bunch where you can kinda say, I wouldn't put them in like a top 15 position, but maybe top 20, right? I think we can change this around to maybe like not top 15, top 20 and all of that, but I do think these characters, for example, would be character like G, who I do think is still a very capable character. Obviously have fallen off a little bit ever since the previous season. The changes weren't that kind to him, and I do think because of how he is reliant on V-Trigger, he doesn't get to take advantage that much of V-Shift. So that is a little bit impactful, and obviously they did change how his level 3 special moves work a little bit, give him more combo options and more combo variety, which is good. But the changes, I think, to his V skill and V shift in general kinda hurt him. He's still a very good character overall, but not quite there yet. And on that note, I also think Akuma belongs in this kind of situation where Akuma have fallen off. Like, I still think he's a pretty good character, but there are a lot of characters who are just simply better now. The V shift, I feel like, ended up hurting him, and he doesn't really take advantage of it that much, if I'm being honest. And the thing about it is that, a more focus on the neutral kinda exposed some of his neutral weaknesses, right? Because Akuma had really powerful rush down, I feel like, once he got the knockdown. He had good he had good whiff punishing, right? With a standing medium kick, but still Akuma neutral was kinda difficult. You know what I mean? So if you take a look at all of these characters, all of them have really powerful neutral game. And Akuma, maybe he's on par with some of them, but because of his lack of HP, and because how V-shift I do think kinda hurt him a little bit, especially in corner pressure. Like if you're fishing with heavy punches, if you're fishing with EX red fireballs, that kind of stuff can get punished, and he doesn't really wanna take advantage that much with V-shift. So I do think he's just outclassed. He's not a bad character, he's just outclassed. And obviously the lack of HP makes him kinda inconsistent. I do think Ken is a lot more consistent right now. And on that note, I also want to put Laura here, because I do think this character is a very powerful one, and obviously proving to be successful. Item is doing a lot of really good work with Laura. V-shift, I do think it hurt her a little bit, but she still got counters to it. I think the biggest issue with Laura is the top tiers. If you take a look at Poison, which probably beats her, Luke, which probably beats her, Cammy beats her. I'm not sure about Rashid, Dhalsim and Yuri probably do. Guile is difficult. Like, a lot of the very strong characters are very good against Laura, and that is probably her biggest issue. She's not a bad character herself, I do think she's very capable, just like these other two. Outclassed a little bit, but have hard time against some of these top guys, which makes life a little bit difficult. And on that same note, I also want to compare Akira and put her in this position. Akira, I feel like, is one of these characters who on paper is very very good, but also because of who is good, she's struggling. If you're using Akira and you're fighting this character like Poison, right, that's difficult, right? Balrog, that's difficult. Luke, that's difficult. Like, you have to consider who is very good to think about the viability of a character, right? Now, Akira got some issues. Her biggest issues, in my opinion, are dealing with fireballs, right? You have characters like Guile, who's very good, Luke, who's very good, so her fireball issues kinda stand out. And obviously I do think her -4 punishing isn't that amazing, and that makes her have hard time versus character like Poison and Dhalsim. She doesn't really have armor, she kinda have to YOLO her way in. I do think she struggles against zoning in general, and zoners being powerful, kinda set her back. And obviously, while her whiff punishing is amazing, you have characters like Karin, Kolin and Ken who also have that. She have hard time versus Bison, which, I don't know. Like, she struggles versus a lot of the relevant characters, right? Which, is a problem. And on that same note, Ryu, I do think also kinda sticks out in the same region. I do think Ryu is good, but it's just a general theme of these characters, right? They're very good, but they struggle against these guys. Ryu probably does well versus Cammy, but Ryu have very hard time versus Dhalsim, hardish time versus Yuri. I haven't seen the Luke versus Ryu matchup, so I don't know, but I know Poison beat him, and I know that Balrog beat him, so It's difficult. It's obviously difficult for Mr. Street Fighter, but I do think he's a good character. Everyone here is capable, it's just that you kind of have a little bit of struggle. And I do think also Cody you can put in this place. Cody is one of these guys who I do think is, like, honestly, I'm not sure what to think of Cody. Like, I play him, and if I'm being completely honest, my opinion on Cody changes on the day. Some days I feel like Cody is ridiculously stupid, and some days I feel like Cody is like trash. I'm not sure. I'm honestly not sure. Like, my confidence in Cody goes up and down kind of rapidly. My biggest issue is how he is that because you kind of have to rely on a lot of V-trigger stuff and a lot of EX zonk and a lot of just tools that I don't think are very consistent. Like, the biggest issue with Cody is his lack of consistency. It's very difficult to be consistent with him. Like I said, some days you will feel like $1,000,000, some days not so much. He is good in short sets, so for tournament play I do think he's good. Long sets I don't like him that much, to be honest. I don't know, but I do think overall he's in a pretty good position, right? Like, I can't take a look at Cody and say he's anything worse than being like in this top 20-ish position. I do think he's pretty nice overall. And on that similar note, I do think Ed also belongs here, and I will put Falk as well. I think these two characters are in just outside of top 10 positions. Ed is one of these guys who I did actually put in high regard. Like, I had him in the A tier, and I said that he is really powerful. Maybe he didn't end up being as powerful as I expected, to be honest, because he still kind of have some difficulties. But I still believe in this character, right? I still think Ed have really good matchups overall. He have really good neutral. Maybe he doesn't convert that much out of it, and that is his biggest issues, but the normals themselves are kind of ridiculous. His dash is very good. Maybe my opinion with Ed is swayed by the fact that he is a very powerful online character, so I am not sure, but I do think he's a very good character overall. And we had players like Ending Walker who did really good with Ed. We've seen Nemo do some stuff with Ed. Infiltration did some work with him, so I do think he is a character that can be really good. Falk is kind of in the same boat. She's like a Poison Light kind of like character. I don't think she have like any major issues, to be honest, at the moment. I do think her pressure is kind of ridiculous, honestly, especially with the corner stuff. Obviously V-shift can kind of work against it, but you can set it up yourself so that you kind of are safe against it. And if you know about this, I have been playing Falk a lot. Like, she's one of the characters that I wanted to learn. I do have a very high win rate with her, right? Like the Shirimi hype account, I took from like Diamond to Super Diamond, very smooth, very easy sailing. Beating a lot of players that I even struggle against with Poison, I'm beating them with Falk. Maybe people just don't know the matchup, but I do think she is a very capable character. You had players like the Forfils had success with her, and he won the CPT for the UK and Ireland, which is a very competitive and a very fierce region. So that is really good for her. I think overall she is very capable. Let's put it that way. Obviously we'll have some struggles, but she is capable. On the same note, and I know this might surprise some of you, but this is my honest beliefs, we finally got Nash in the mid tiers. Previously I had put Nash at the final spot, him being the weakest character in the game, but I don't think that stands the test of time right now. I do think Nash is in a very good spot. Him getting his reframe was a really big deal. They changed how he worked considerably, and all of these changes made him a lot better. His Sobat is probably one of the most abusable normals in the game. Nash had success. We have players like Ronaldinho who won CPT Brazil with him, and obviously you have a lot of really good Nash players like Kyo Anton, and overall I do think he and Bonchan even is playing him like now and then, like every once in a while. So he is showing up. He's a character who's finally coming back to life, and I do think that is really cool because Nash is hype, right? he he kind of paid a lot for his season 1 sins, but I do think we got Nash back, so that is pretty cool. And on the same note, and this might surprise some of you, but I do honestly think Rose is kind of in the same position. Rose is one of the characters who I do think in theory is pretty good. The biggest issue with Rose is in theory, because she is a lot of work, and I do think Juri might be in the same. What I'm gonna say about Rose kind of applies to Juri as well. Maybe more so on Rose than Juri, but it's the same concept. And that is, they are characters who are on paper. They don't really have, like, I guess Rose have like a glaring issue, Juri doesn't really, but Rose have really strong neutral control, right? I don't think she have really good normals, especially for like the far range. Her fireball game is pretty nice, her anti-air game and anti-air potential is really good. V-Trigger 1 ended up being really cheap. You are seeing her featured a lot in some of the CBT events. Players like Filipino Man did really well with her. She's doing well on Street Fighter League. She's kind of heavily featured. You will see players like Luffy now finally going back to Rose and trying to experiment with her. And me, after playing Rose for a fair bit, I do think she is capable. The issue with Rose is that it's hard to... you have to play so goddamn perfect, right? And that is difficult. If I'm being that's hard. And that's kind of the same thing with Juri, right? You have to play perfect. And if you're constantly having to play perfect, that is training, right? Doesn't mean that the character is weak, just that you have to play so on point. You need to have your DPs on point with Rose, your air to airs on point, wave punishing, hit confirming, crouching medium kick. If you're not hit confirming, crouching medium kick into spiral, you are losing on situations, because you will do crouching medium kick into fireball, or EX fireball to get the knockdown, but that can be interrupted. So Chirach requires a lot out of you. Maybe this means that she isn't as good as she can be, but I don't know. And Juri, I do think is kind of in the same boat in a way. After playing Juri extensively, I do think she is a fairly decent character. I would put her in a fairly decent mid-tier spot. She doesn't... my experience with Juri is that she doesn't really get dominated by anyone. I don't think there is a matchup with Juri where I felt helpless, or I felt like she doesn't really do much. I think she is a very well-rounded character. Just with Rose, you have to be so much on point, which is difficult, it's taxing, right? You will see players like Infiltration win CBT events with her because she is capable, right? Honestly, Juri is capable, just that you have to be so much on point, which is hard, all things considered. And there is a character that I forgot to put before them, and I do think that's Sakura. I do think Sakura is a pretty strong character all around. And you know what, let's put extra Sakura in here next to Akuma, because I do think that's kind of where she belongs. Anything lower than that is too low for her, I believe. But I do think Sakura she's really good. She kinda is in the same Karin, Kolin, Ken kind of spot, but I do think these three kinda are a little bit more consistent than her. Obviously she can be kinda but still kinda struggles against zoning a little bit, and that's gonna be an issue for her, right? Her V-shift is decent, her pressure game, especially in the corner, is very, very powerful. There's a little bit of risk if you go for the down forward heavy kick, which is a little bit risky. She doesn't really whiff punish into heavy damage as well as Karin and Kolin does, because you get standing light kick into medium punch TP. If you want to get the damage, you need to use V-Trigger 2, so you can get the V-Trigger 2 Tatsu after standing light kick with punish. So, I mean, she does have some options, but I do think she's outclassed by these three. She kind of fills their roles, especially Karin, Kolin, Ken, and Cammy. She plays in the same way, almost, but a little bit weaker, right? So, that's where she stands. And I do think, obviously, we have to put Chun-Li in there as well. Maybe she is a little bit better than Juri, I believe, but Chun... I made a video previously, I've called it the Chun-Li problem, and I do think this is a character that does have a big glaring issue with her anti-air game that is really holding her back. I do think it's very difficult to win with Chun-Li now. Simply because the issue is major, right? And it's a very easy counter. She doesn't have a lot of strengths, obviously. She's very well rounded. Just that this weakness is so glaring and so obvious that makes life kind of difficult for her. Her punishing is really good. She can be really abusive with the standing heavy punch spam, but the weakness is big, and you also have to look at who is the top tiers, right? I have always believed that Urian is hard for her. Dhalsim is like unwinnable, honestly, for Chun-Li. I do think Rashid's kinda abusive as well because they have really good jumps. Cammy, like, come on, she's a jumping machine. Chun-Li always struggled with chasing people around the screen, so Luke is kinda difficult, although she is good at punishing him on block. Poison obviously is hard for her. Balrog, like what is she gonna do versus the top 7 or the top 8? I do think every single one of them almost is a bad matchup for her. Thess, I do think is also kinda difficult if you wanna play the jumping game. Guile, maybe evenish. Zeku evenish. She beats Karin. Kolin, she wins probably. Bison beats her. So it's like her spread against the top tiers is really bad. That's honestly the biggest issue with Chun-Li, and obviously now she is very vulnerable to jumping, so it's unfortunate. Like Chun-Li, I feel bad for Chun-Li. And now let's put Alex in here as well, because he's a character who have proven to be successful. We'll see Problem X doing really good job with Alex. A lot of people still want to meme that Alex is a bad character, but I think he is a beast, in all honesty. His neutral game is very powerful, and apparently it's starting to appear that maybe Alex is a counter back to Karin, and this is obviously significant because who plays Karin? We got Punk and we got Bonchan, two very relevant players, and that is important. That's really important. If Alex really does beat Karin and ended up being a good counter to her, that is a big deal. That's a big deal, and obviously he's a character who have really insane damage output, and I do think V-Shift ended up helping him overall because simply him not having any other defensive options. So overall he's in a good spot. I do think Alex is in a good spot, all things considered. And speaking of being in a good spot, especially being underrated, F.A.N.G. Previously I had him in like the bottom 8, but I don't think this stood out that well. F.A.N.G. I do think is a pretty powerful, annoying character, right? Maybe people still don't know the matchup versus F.A.N.G. that well, but his neutral is actually really nice, and it's been proven by players like Mono, players like Daigo, who played him a little bit and showed you like how good his neutral really can be, and how good his control can be. Again, one of the characters who are simply helped by V-Shift because of their lack of defensive options, right? Didn't have a 3-frame, didn't have a reversal. Now at least he have V-Shift, where you kind of have to throw him, but that gives him an option to backdash, and he actually have a good backdash, so that's pretty nice. Or like jumping, he have like an instant overhead with the jumping medium kick, so that's good. So V-Shift ended up helping him a little bit, and I don't think hurt him that much when it comes to his offense and his setups. So that's really nice. Overall, I do think he's in a pretty good spot. We'll also put Sagat in there. I feel like we're getting like this middle batch of characters is getting too thick. But honestly, I do think that is the current balancing of the game. Like most of the characters in the game kinda belongs in this category, where you like maybe Sagat, maybe Kage, Vega, Birdie, Menat, Ibuki. Like all of these characters, let's put Oro in there, Honda, and obviously Abigail as well. Abigail will be a little bit higher, but a lot of these characters are just in positions where I do think they are very like it's very feasible to win with them, right? For example, if we're talking about Sagat, like he does have some his issues, right? But I still think he's capable. Maybe not as capable as say G, Akuma or Sakura. He have a little bit more of a struggle, but he's still a character with really good strengths. And his zoning I do think is pretty good now. V-Shift ended up helping him. Sagat didn't really suffer because of V-Shift at all. And I do think anti-fireball tools are kind of they are a thing in the game, but most of the characters who have anti-fireball tools don't really stick to you, and nerfs to characters like Cammy ended up helping him. Balrog obviously being very strong is annoying to him. Dhalsim being very strong is annoying to him, but I do think he still have decent spread overall. Kage is kind of in the same boat. He is probably on the weaker side when it comes to Shotos. I would certainly put him below Ryu and Sakura and Akuma. He does struggle a little bit in the neutral, but his burst damage is still something that you can't sleep on, right? He can rob you, like easily can rob you if you sleep on the wheel, which makes him a dangerous character to fight against. Vega is again one of these characters who in theory, on paper, can be very devastating, right? If you are able to play Vega in the ways that Punk was playing him, he is ridiculously good, in my opinion, right? He's very slept on if played by a competent player who have insane reactions. Kind of like the Juri Rose kind of deal, like if you play perfect, right? Vega's amazing. But that doesn't really happen by many players. But you know, still really good players are getting results with him, and I do think V-Shift ended up helping him and hurting him as well, because some of his wall jump gimmicks are kinda weakened by V-Shift. So that's interesting, but overall I do think it's a big deal, and he does have a really good V-skill as well. His V-skill helped him a lot, so I will easily put him in the B tier. Honestly, this mid-back I do think are all very close to each other. Honda and Birdie are kind of like two characters who do a lot of damage, have really good, they're actually very similar, have really good neutral control, can easily sway matches in their favor with a couple of hits, so that's really good, but both of them are kinda hard countered by some of the other characters. Both of them kinda have like some issues with anti-airs, especially Birdie I will say. And obviously both of them have armor and everything, so they are kind of in a similar way, still very competent characters, but I do think, you know, they do have their issues here and there. Almost everyone in this tier list, especially starting from like maybe from Rose down below, everyone have like an issue here or there that's kind of keeping them from being really competitive, but they're still like, you can still do work with them. Menat, I do think obviously is, you know, I don't think Menat is that bad, honestly. Like, we can actually put Menat here. I do think she's better than these guys in there. Menat also one of the characters who got helped by V-Shift. She is like a Dhalsim light. Previously I've said that Falk is like a poison light. Now Menat is like a Dhalsim light. I think Dhalsim being that ridiculous kind of overshadows how good Menat is, but she is still a very, very powerful character. The main issue with Menat, I feel like, compared to Dhalsim, is that she does have a much weaker V-reversal, and that ends up hurting her. Dhalsim obviously doesn't have a 3-frame, she does, so maybe that kinda balancing out, but I do think overall she's still really, really good. And her pressure game overall is weaker than Dhalsim. Now with V-Trigger 1 she is cheap, but you know what, Dhalsim is cheap all the time, so Dhalsim is like a cheaper Menat, you know, all things considered. Ibuki is, you know what, I will put Ibuki here. I do think she's a little bit better than these guys. I will put her in the same tier as like Rose, Chun, and Juri. She isn't a bad character at all, but you know, the more emphasis on the neutral isn't helping her. She still have decent neutral, just that, you know, it's difficult, right? Her main focus was getting like the one whiff punish or like the one situation, or going in with the EX kunai, and obviously now people get out far easier than before, so that is an issue for her. You know, her own defensive game is still really good, right? And her own V triggers are a lot weaker because of V shift. But I still think she's capable. I can't say in good conscience that Ibuki is a bad character, but you know, there are a lot better that you can do. And speaking of that, let's talk about Oro. And Oro, I do think, when Oro first came out, I was really doom and gloom on him, and I still don't think he's like a very good competitive character. but he's not as bad probably as I have given him credit. I should have given him a little bit more credit. Tingo Stone did end up holding him in a decently alright mid-tierish place. He's still not good, and I do think people with better matchup knowledge will kinda still beat him easily, but you know what, he's not like bottom tier. I honestly had him like bottom tier previously, at least that's what I thought of him, but he is just low tier now, or like in the lower mid tier kind of deal. So it's still in a pretty decent place. These characters are the ones where I think struggles start to show up. Let me first put Dan, Lucia, and Necalli in this place, because I do think these three characters, you know what? Yeah, let's put Lucia in there. I don't think she's that bad as these guys. But Dan, Lucia, and Necalli are characters where you start to struggle now. Like, now you're struggling. I still think Dan is really good. It's just that the reward for the amount of effort that you put in is kinda insane. Like, if I'm being completely honest, his V-Skill 2 stuff is really hard. He can be very oppressive, but I'm seeing now that people are using V-Reversals more against him. They're using V-Shift more against him. So that is starting to hurt him. He does have a lot of recovery on whiff, so people are getting better at whiff punishing him. So overall, he is a character specialist kind of guy. Not as bad as you would expect out of Dan, but still, for the amount of effort that you're putting in, I don't know, like, he's not a hopeless case, but he's not very good. Lucia is kind of in the same deal. Lucia, she's, like I said, like on Akira and Sakura and Karin and Kolin and Cammy and all that, she kind of fills that role, but man, it's such a struggle with Lucia. Like, I think the biggest issue for me was Lucia. It's like her neutral is weird. You know what I mean? It's like if she had like a better standing medium kick, maybe she would be a lot better, because she does have good walk speed. She does have some decent whiff punishes with the sweep, which isn't very rewarding, but still, like, it's something. Her damage output is not bad. Her pressure is not bad, like, by all means. Just that she I don't know, I don't think Lucia is cheap enough. Like, she doesn't get in easily. She struggles versus zoning, especially strong zoning, and these characters kind of hurt her a lot. Her whiff punishing isn't very rewarding. Like, even if you happen to sweep, that's not that much. That's not a big deal. So she struggles to get in, and her whiff punishing isn't very rewarding. She kind of have hard time controlling the neutral because of the light kick fireball or the fireball in general. For the amount of effort that you're supposed to put in with Lucia, I don't think the reward is there, unfortunately. And Necalli is kind of in the same deal. I've been also playing Necalli recently a lot, and outside of V-Trigger Necalli I still think is really good. But non-V-Trigger Necalli is really outclassed. Even since Season 1, I've always thought that non-V-Trigger Necalli was kind of like but the V-Trigger version helped him. But even now, like, even with V-Trigger, I would put Necalli here. I honestly wouldn't put Necalli in the like S tier or anything. He's still kind of fair now. So having all of these guys be better and him being really that weak without V-Trigger is kind of hurting him. V-Shift, I do think, is a mechanic that also hurt him a little bit. So I don't know. It's like who even plays Necalli now? You know what I mean? He's so outclassed by the other characters, and he didn't really get enough changes that make him stand out and compete. Like, if he got the Ryu treatment, or if he got the Ken treatment, where they got some new tools that made them more competitive, maybe you can put Necalli in a better place. But I do think he's kind of outclassed. Maybe putting him in the C tier is a little bit harsh, but I do think that is kind of where he belongs. And finally, for the bottom 4, there's still Armika, there's still Blanca, there's still, maybe Gil is here, and Zangief. And obviously, Armika, maybe let's put Armika here, maybe that's too harsh for her. Armika is just so inconsistent. She's just so inconsistent. Obviously V-Shift ended up being a big issue for her. Constantly returning to the neutral is a big issue for Armika. She kinda have to hard read the opponent so much to get the W. On defense, she still kinda struggles herself. The changes to the EX wingless airplane is kinda good, but she still needs more. I think the biggest issue with Mika is that after a knockdown mid-screen, you kinda have to spend on EX speech to chase V-Shift, which that's an issue. That hurts the character so much. And obviously, even if you have to do that, the opponent can still just backdash, so the 50-50 is not in her favor, I feel like. Guile, I feel like we've talked about Guile, Blanka, and Zangief a lot, right? Guile, again, one of these guys who ended up being hurt by V-Shift, I feel like. He does have some decent neutral, but he's just not rewarded for it at all. Most of the time you see Guile players playing in a really erratic Unga Bunga fashion, which doesn't really work out in the long term. I don't think there's a reason to play him. Like outside of having some of the swaggiest combos in the game and him being like a genuinely fun character, I don't think there's a reason to play him, to be completely honest. Blanka, he struggles a little bit on the neutral. I do think V-Shift kinda does work versus him in V-Trigger 2. Maybe he isn't like useless, but I find him very difficult, especially if you happen to watch Street Fighter League. Like Nishikin, he plays so well, but he still loses every time I watch it, right? So it's like, I don't know. I think his V-Skill 2 is actually really good. It's a lot better than we gave it credit for initially. And it's a decent zoning tool, but still, I feel like if you really know the matchup, Blanka, he falls down a lot. And final spot is Zangief. I firmly believe that Zangief is the worst character in the game. He's kinda stupid once he gets an EX SBD, but the odds are not that much in his favor actually. Thanks to V-Shift, thanks to just, V-Shift, because he had, it's added a layer that made the mix-up not that much in his favor. Now, Zangief himself actually have a really good V-Shift, so that is decent for him, but he was struggling already, right? In my previous tier list, I had Zangief in the B tier, and I said that these characters are weaker than him. And he was already struggling because of V-Shift, right? But now they added the nerf to the EX SBD, right? Where they took out the throw invincibility, and that just ended up killing the character almost, right? Because now Zangief is very open on defense. He does have a good V-Shift break, so that is not bad, but it's just so hard to win with Zangief. Like, you can do some stuff with him, maybe, but I can't know. Like even Itabashi is almost always playing Abigail right now. Like, why would you, outside of character loyalty, why would you play Zangief? I honestly don't think there is a reason. I honestly don't think there is a reason. And that is pretty much it for today's video. Let me know your thoughts on this tier list. Do you think I was too harsh on some of the characters? I feel like maybe Lucia, maybe Necalli I'm a little bit too harsh on. Everyone else is fine. The mid bulk of characters is honestly how I feel on the game. Bunch of characters who are really close together in terms of power level, but there are a couple here who I do think are clearly better. Please let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I will be leaving a link to the Patreon page, Discord page, and the Twitter and Twitch pages in the description below. Thank you very much for watching and stay safe.